Good evening, Guidely. I'm Shannon Woodruff, and I'm here today again with Gary Zukav and Linda Francis. Gary is a New York Times bestselling author of Seed of the Soul and several other transformational works, including 2 books co-authored with Linda. Together, they help people across the world in creating meaning and purpose, creativity and health, joy and love. They call this authentic power, the alignment of the personality with the soul. And today we'll be talking about authentic power, as well as the coronavirus and global protests. Welcome.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you, Shannon. So good to be here with you and everyone.
It's so great to have you back. You know, you were my first guest when I started hosting our live interview series, and it was one of the most impactful times that I can remember having here on the screen. And I know it served so many of our viewers on both of our camps. And so I'm just so excited to welcome you guys back.
Oh, thank you.
It's good to be here. It's very good to be here. And this is a good time to be here.
Indeed.
It's
so much going on in our whole human experience on this planet. It's really such a powerful time, and we're really excited to be here with everyone, with you, beloved, and talking about the things that are most important.
Definitely. You know, when we first talked a few months ago, it was really the beginning of the last several months of adventures that we've all shared, socially distanced adventures, of course. But what has changed since we last talked for you both and in the world?
Well, there have been a lot of things changing in the world, but I'd like to look at what's really changing.
Mm-hmm.
You might think that, or some of our viewers and listeners might think that's post-protest coronavirus life, and what's that going to be like? Some people, of course, are thinking of the coronavirus itself. Some people are thinking of the dramatic changes in life and lifestyle that are happening now. Lifestyle for many and life for millions more who have lost their jobs, lost their income, don't have a way to support their families. And then, of course, the economy around the world is very ill. But those are not the most important things I'm talking about. I'm talking about a change so large, so far-reaching, so unimaginable, that it's only now coming into our awareness. It's a change that probably began something like 3 decades ago. We crossed a line. We moved past a threshold, and we found ourselves looking at a definite before and an after in our human experience. So I'm going to talk to you now from a more impersonal perspective rather than my personal perspective, which I always enjoy doing, what's happening with Linda and me and what we're planning. But I'm talking about a perspective that is as large as any perspective possible now. It is a transformation in the consciousness of humankind itself, the consciousness itself of humankind. That is the big change. And everything following that is becoming increasingly evident as a part of that change. That change was the expansion of our ability to experience ourselves in the world. Before this threshold was crossed, we had our 5 senses, and they told us everything we could know about the world. And we had our intellect, which used the data that the 5 senses provided, and it assessed that data in terms of what is valuable and what is not. And what is valuable helps us survive. What is valuable helps us get what we want. What is invaluable helps us get what we need. All of that has changed. The ability to manipulate and control is no longer the power that will take us forward in our evolution. In fact, here's the surprising thing, the startling thing. It's now the opposite. What used to be good medicine for us is now poison.
Can you
Yes,
Can you state that in simpler terms? What the good medicine that is now poison? Can we clarify that?
yes. Let's give it a label. Let's call the old way of looking at power external power, the
Hmm.
ability to manipulate and to control the world. Is that clear?
Mhm.
I know everyone can relate to that because that's what helped us survive for 300,000 years or 2.5 million years, depending upon where you start human evolution. Now we have a new kind of power, and we didn't make it up. We can see it, we can feel it, and we can test it out. And the new power is the alignment of the personality with the soul. That is authentic power, real power. So, how can we test this out? By experimenting with external power and authentic power. Try manipulating and controlling, and you will find that it produces only violence and destruction. Between individuals, it produces emotional violence and emotional destruction. Between nations and cultures and religions, it produces physical violence and destruction as well. Well, violence and destruction between nations, cultures, and religions is nothing new. That's the history of our five sensory species. But now we're becoming a multisensory species. Our expanded consciousness gives us more than the five senses to help us understand our lives and our world. And that's the context, Shannon, and that's the context that I'm sharing with all of you so that when we talk about the coronavirus, when we talk about the protest, when we talk about predecessors, for example, the collapse of the housing bubble in 2008, all of that is now visible from a larger perspective. And from that perspective, once you entertain it, then I think you'll see why we're saying that this is the most interesting, exciting, stimulating, invigorating, and in sometimes to parts of our personalities, terrifying and numbing times to live in. It's all happening now.
Mm.
It's all happening at the same time, and that time is now. So that's the prelude, and I'd like to give one other too. For all of the people who are listening to us, we suggest that you not take anything that Linda and I say as true because we say it. And beyond that, we suggest and do before every event, that you not take anything that anyone says because they're being interviewed or because they've been on television or because they've written a book or because they have a pulpit. Try it out yourself, because this new kind of power, this authentic power, is a power that makes you the authority in your own life. And that's quite a responsibility. It's one that we've always had, but we've never recognized it while we were five sensory. Now that we're multisensory, we're beginning to experience a lot more about ourselves and about the world. And that lot is coming slowly, to some people, gently, subtly. To others, it's coming dramatically, quickly, but it's coming. And within a few generations, the entire human species will be multisensory. That means there's a lot of people now who aren't. And we're not any better or superior in any way to the people who are five sensory. That's just a temporary ebb in the flow of evolution. Within a few generations, the entire human species will be multisensory.
Now, when you say multisensory, can you describe that if nobody has heard that term before, people in our audience, that might be a new term for them. Can you describe the difference between five senses and the multisensory human?
Yes.
Absolutely. So I think you know what we mean by five senses, meaning seeing, hearing, taste, touch, and what did I miss?
Smell, olfactory sense.
Olfactory, right? And So that used to be our only way.
What we could see, hear, taste, touch, and smell.
That's right.
Everything outside of our body, really, what our body interacted with.
Yes.
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 In our minds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. and our intellect. But now there's more than that. We have hunches. We know something. Maybe we know something that someone's going to say before they even say it, or it can show up in many different ways. We've having experiences with someone who passed on, but they're visiting you. They come and see you, and I've had that happen a couple of times where I knew they were there, letting me know they're fine. Things like that. There are many other things, but they're not in the realm of the five senses. There's more than that. We hear about intuition, and I'll give you an example. I thought, before I read The Seed of the Soul, which I read it when it came out in '89, and I hadn't met Gary. I didn't know anything about any of this. But when I read The Seed of the Soul, yeah, there it is. Yeah, that's the old version. That's right. Yes, that's the one I read. And I didn't realize that. I thought, well, I'd heard the word intuition, but I didn't really know. I thought, well, I have good intuition. I felt like I did, but I didn't know why I had good intuition. I just felt like I did. But then when I read the book, I realized, wow, I actually was being supported in my life in a non-physical way. So it wasn't the five senses. It was actually help from the universe. I'll call it that, because that's how I experience it. I knew that I was being supported, and I didn't know that until that time. I didn't realize all the experiences I'd had in my life that I felt like I was supported were actually had nothing to do with. It wasn't like I'm better. I just have this great intuition. It was actually something that we all can tap into and open to when we become multisensory. We can all do that. And so it was really such a powerful thing when I realized it. I laughed, actually. I remember I laughed out loud when I read it in The Seed of the Soul. And I thought, oh, I had this part of me that felt like, I'm so good. I have such good intuition because I knew things and all this stuff. And then I realized, no, it was just, I was being given information. It was wonderful. It was supportive, and I was being supported in my growth all that time. So I was so excited when I found that out and realized that everyone will be able to do that eventually. And we're always being supported in one way or another anyway, but not really recognizing that we're being supported. So I didn't until that time. I didn't know, oh, I'm being supported. Mm-hmm. And I was so grateful, and it really changed everything for me, because then I began to see all the things that were happening in my life, and had such gratitude for the support that I was always getting to grow, to learn, to be more loving. And so that's one. There are many examples of multisensory experiences that we can talk about.
For example, have you ever had the sense that you're more than you thought? That you're more than a mind and a body. That's multisensory perception. Mm-hmm. Because you are. You have an immortal component. You had a part of you that existed before you were born, and that will exist after you die. Understanding that is one thing, and then beginning to sense it is another. I'm talking about the another. Have you ever had the sense that the world isn't what you thought it was? In other words, it's not just random. Carl Jung talked about synchronicity, and we see synchronicity now and then, meaningful coincidences we can't explain in terms of the intellect or the five senses. Well, as you become multisensory, you begin to say, that's the way the world is. It's meaningful. It's not random. It's not accidental. It's not predetermined. It is symbolic. So when we were five sensory, we would study the world. We would look at the world to learn about the world. Now we're multisensory, and the world can teach us about us.
So would you say that could also be termed awakening? I've heard that, as people go through kind of their awakening and more of their intuition or other gifts come online, that would be a similar term that could name that what's happening, becoming multisensory.
Absolutely. But there are many people who have different awakenings, and they come to them in their own meaningful ways.
Mhm.
What we're suggesting here is that our entire species is undergoing a transformation. And we are beginning to become aware of that. And that is the awakening that we are describing. And part of that sounds sort of abstract, but it's not, because your life changes, can change dramatically. Shortly after my mother passed on, Linda and I were here in Ashland, Oregon. My mom, in a way, was in Kansas. And my sister, she'd had another heart issue, failure. And my sister called to say, to discuss removing her from life support, removing the life support from her. That's funny to say it that way, because we always have life support. But they took tubes out of her arms. Linda and I agreed. We couldn't go to Kansas because we both had the flu. We just couldn't fly. We couldn't travel. And my mom's timing didn't account for that. Or maybe it did exactly. That's how I really think. So we agreed. And Linda and I were sitting in the living room. And I was sort of not daydreaming, but reminiscing, because in the last few years of her life, she had to move out of the little town that she lived for 50 years and all of her friends there for half a century, and the house that she'd been in, and moved to a nursing home in another town in Lawrence, Kansas. And I was reminiscing about these things, and I remember myself saying, oh, I found myself talking to her in my imagination. I said, I'm sorry things got so messy in the last few years, Mom. And then I heard a voice, and it was hers. And it said, things are always messy, honey. And she said it only the way a little Kansas mom could say it. It was her voice, and that's the way she spoke. And what she said is something I could never deny. So that's an experience. That's a multisensory experience. Now, some people might think, some people might be frightened that something like that's happening to them. And our suggestion is, don't be. Maybe other people will be frightened if you talk to someone who's not multisensory. But if it happened to you and it was meaningful, it happened to you and it was meaningful.
Yeah.
Accept that, because hundreds of millions of us are beginning to have experiences like that as we become multisensory. 30 years ago, it used to be sort of on the farther edges. Now it's everywhere.
Yeah. I can attest to that in my personal life and my own becoming multisensory. I'd like to ask a question. As a species, you're talking about us having this evolution. Do you feel, and I think I know the answer, but do you feel that the children being born today, or the children born in the last 15 or 20 years, are coming here more multisensory than we were, or even, my parents and my grandparents, that were being born more online and more tapped in?
Yes.
Yes.
But don't think that multisensory perception is coming into human consciousness through neonates alone. It's coming into hundreds of millions of people. And they are the ones we're writing books for and having events for, because they're standing with one foot in one world and one foot in another. One foot in the old consciousness that is dying. A consciousness of 5 sensory perception and power as manipulation and control. And the other foot on another side of the threshold. On that side is the new consciousness, is power as alignment of the personality with the soul, with harmony and cooperation and sharing and reverence for life. And so we're in a time of overlap. That's why I'm suggesting that we're living in the most remarkable time possible because of this overlap. This is a time of our beginning and a time of our ending. Ending is the perception of power as manipulation and control. Beginning is power as love. Power is the alignment of personality with soul. Ending is the world is cold and we are helpless in it. Beginning is perception of the world as meaningful, as always showing us how we can grow spiritually, not
Alive.
forcing us. And the universe is alive.
Yes.
Beginning is a perception and an experience of the universe as alive and compassionate and wise.
So those of us with one foot in each, you described that. Many of us are struggling, obviously, probably all of us are struggling, but many of us are struggling to know what to do or how to act. We know that we have become multisensory to take part in this time. How can we do that?
Oh, that's the heart of it all. Because with multisensory perception comes the revolution revealing or the reception of new tools that we didn't understand or have or know how to use before we were multisensory. For example, in the old, and please join anytime, beloved, in the old consciousness, emotions are not important. They're simply not any more important than an appendix. They're painful sometimes, they get in the way, they prevent the pursuit of external power, getting what you want, when you want it, how you need it. And it's not all selfish like that. They prevent you from making a living, from supporting your family. But in the new consciousness, emotions are the force field of your soul.
Wow. Wow, what a shift. I mean, I can say definitely that I completely understood the first way you defined emotions.
Yeah.
And in my own life, and I've seen it in many others, we are struggling with allowing ourselves to express our emotions as the new consciousness of the soul. Is that what you said? I wanted to say currency because I feel like that has a similar, like, this is how maybe you can help me explain this more.
I'm not sure exactly what you meant by that, but I do know that I realized that my emotions are really important, but in a different way than I thought. It's a very different way than I thought. Before, I used to think that I have a right to feel upset because somebody said something to me in a certain way or did something. And so I felt like I'm an emotional person, and I was, proud of being an emotional person, and I had a right to be emotional. But what I realized, and I'll just use that one example. I have many more, but I'll use that one. And so that one, when I realized, well, yes, I do have a right to be emotional. I do have a right to be upset if I want to be. However, that's not really what I want to do. Because when I was emotional, when I was acting like upset with Gary or with people before Gary, I realized that those emotions are important for me to know about because I was reacting to something that was happening outside of me. So let's say Gary says something and I don't like what he's saying. I have, just feel like I have a right to say something. And some people would not say anything, but they would be angry inside and they would be judging, or they would spew out their emotions. I mean, there are other ways you can do it too. But the whole idea for me and what I learned is that my emotions, when they would become active, especially the ones that were painful, were the ones that were telling me about myself. It was really helping me to learn, oh, that doesn't have anything to do with Gary. He said something and I reacted, so I have my work to do. So I can feel that emotion in my body as a physical sensation. I can notice its thoughts, blaming and judging, but I don't have to act on it. I can act from a loving place instead. That is power. That is authentic power. That's how you create it. Is it easy? No. But is it powerful and supportive? and constructive? Absolutely.
Well, let me be clear about one thing here. If you are in fear, which means if a part of your personality that's angry or jealous or resentful or vengeful
Or upset, like
or
I said.
upset or overwhelmed or manic or depressed
Mhm.
or obsessive or compulsive, has to go to work every day, or addictive, has to have food, gambling, sex, pornography, a fix, alcohol, nicotine, drugs. All of those come with emotions. And as you become emotionally aware, and as Linda was mentioning, and if we had more time, we could show you what that means in your body, become emotionally aware somatically. And that means in terms of physical sensations in your body, not I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm heavy, but that hurt. That felt like an ice pick on the left side of my chest. Or, oh, I feel like we've got a golf ball in the middle of my throat and it's contracting and it's painful.
Yeah.
You can begin to become aware of your emotions in terms of physical sensations. And if they're painful, that will tell you that if you act on that emotion, if you act on that energy, you will create painful, destructive consequences for yourself. That's why I'm saying emotions are messages from your soul. They're the force field and they carry information. Now, all of that is in support of what Linda just said. She also didn't mention another part of this, that you have emotions that feel wonderful. Contentment, gratitude, patience, caring, all of the universe. These are all, and these come with physical sensations also, and all of those physical sensations are pleasing. You want more of them.
Right.
So you know when you're emotionally aware that when you're feeling those things, and you act on that, you're acting on love, and that will create constructive, positive consequences in your life.
Yeah.
So all of this brings us back to your question. What do we do in this time of the overlap? What do we do when we're experiencing the old consciousness and the new consciousness?
And what do we do when there is a pandemic worldwide? And what do we do when there are global protests? What do we do? Is it different? Do we act differently when we're multisensory than when we're five sensory? How does that all fit in?
Yes. She said all the questions that I have in my heart.
Okay. Well, we wanted to give you this introduction.
Yeah.
So that when we say we're in a time of immense change, everyone knows that. But they think it's the coronavirus, or they think it's the collapse of the economy in 2008, or they think it's a protest over what used to be a routine, a horrible, macabre, morbid routine of white people inflicting brutality on Black people that goes all the way back to before the beginning of this country. Suddenly, there was a protest against that became global.
Why now?
Why now?
Yes.
Why now? So let's look at that. Let's. Thank you, beloved.
And I feel it's important that to know that as a species, we've been pursuing external power for all this time. All this time. I mean, it's been just brutality over and over and over again in so many ways. But now, what's different now? That's what you're saying. What's different?
We feel it. Yeah. I mean, multisensory humans feel it. 5D humans, five senses humans feel it. We feel that it's different. And I think we're waiting to see why, how, what do we do?
Okay, we've got half the program left. So we'll start on that right now.
Yeah.
If you look at the coronavirus from the five senses, it is a mutated pathogen or a biological weapon that escaped from a biological weapons laboratory in Wuhan, China. If you look at it from a multisensory perspective, from the impersonal perspective of the soul, you can see that it's a miracle. It is awesome How can I say that after having acknowledged that millions of people are dying, millions more are infected, and there's so much damage to what? To our way of life, the way it was before. When you look at the coronavirus, you begin to see that all of us have been sent home, so to speak, to be with ourselves, to look at ourselves without the distractions that usually take us far away from ourselves and what we're feeling and what our values are. The mindless, robotic routines of our lives, going to work, coming home from work, taking the children on play dates, going shopping, going to the grocery store, discussing finances, discussing sports, discussing the kids, discussing all of these things.
Going to parties.
Going social parties, playing games, the game of finance, the game of cards, the game of fashion. All of those things are suddenly gone, and we were with ourselves. Now, that experience happened to virtually every human being in the earth school, on the earth, in the same context, at the same time. That is awesome, isn't it?
It's really mind-blowing. I mean, it happened so quickly that we all just got sent home to be with ourselves, like you said.
And there's more to it than that, Shannon. If you look at the coronavirus, you'll see that there's one peculiar thing about it that makes it so dangerous and so potentially wonderful at the same time. And that is the fact that contagion occurs before symptoms. In other words, someone can become infected and contagious and shed the coronavirus wherever they go for up to a week before they begin to cough or sneeze or have a fever. And in that time, they're giving it to other people who also will feel excellent for the first 5 or 7 days. And during that time, they will be giving it to others.
Anyway, that's the potential of it. It can happen that way.
It is happening that way.
Yeah.
It is happening right now that way. So, on the other hand, we're beginning to realize that we can wear a mask, for example, because we want to protect ourselves from the virus, but that's not loving. Or we can wear a mask not only to protect ourselves, but to protect other people. It could be someone else's grandmother that we will save by wearing a mask and not giving it to her granddaughter who would take it home. So we're beginning to see that our well-being is intertwined with the well-being of others. Are you isolating yourself? Are you keeping a social distance because you don't want to get the virus? That's not a social distance. That's a selfish distance. Are you keeping the distance because you want to protect other people, because you know you might have the virus and you don't want to give them or anyone else the virus? That's a loving distance. So you have a choice. You have a choice to either be in lockdown or love in. If you're locked up in your apartment and you don't like it, and the only reason you're there is because the governor says you have to be, and you don't want to get this virus from someone else, you're in lockdown. But if you're doing that, and it's difficult to be in isolation with yourself or with someone else, and everything starts to come up, so you can look at your life and what is worth looking at. And those are the things we're talking about, your painful emotions and your blissful emotions. So
in other words, we don't have all the things that we usually do to distract ourselves. Right. The things that we often do robotically, having to go to work in a particular way and go to the bar after work. I mean, I just noticed that when people do that, it can be a total distraction from life and everything else. I mean, we watch TV, whatever it is that we do robotically and automatically that distracts us from feeling what we're really feeling and being able to really connect in a loving way to other people. And that's something that we're getting a chance to look at more clearly now that we're home. And yeah.
Well, and we had some great comments. I'd like to go back to the emotions, which you just reintroduced. We had some great comments about that, about us really now having space to feel these emotions that we kept shoved away with busyness and numbingness and distraction, and the value in actually feeling them as being invitations to trust ourselves, to get to know ourselves, to heal those parts of us that need attention. And that the shift, what I think I hear you saying is the shift is, instead of emotions being an inconvenience and also a distraction, is we will come to value them and encourage true, authentic emotion. Is that what I'm hearing?
You are. The emotions are always authentic. They are what you're feeling. And you can't control what you're feeling, but you can control what you're going to do when an emotion comes. And intention is at the heart of everything that we are saying. You choose. You choose to see your emotions as inconsequential and not manly, or as a manipulative tool that you're using. And that's not male and female. There's males and females on both sides of those behaviors. Or you choose to pay attention to your life, to pay attention to your emotions, because you've heard us discussing it. And if it resonated with you in any way, anywhere, you can begin to experiment with it. And that is a choice of intention. Those are the most important choices you make. And there's only two intentions that you can choose: love and fear. All the other intentions are not fundamental. To go to work, not to go to work, to move, to have a.
So in other words, why are you not going to work? Why are you doing what you're doing? It's always, it's the bottom of it is it either comes from love or from fear.
That's always the why behind the why.
Exactly.
And so these are the things that being in isolation support. So we're just starting now to look from the impersonal perspective of the soul. And as you do, you'll begin to see how awesome the coronavirus really is. Never before has this happened. Now come the protest.
Right.
How did that happen? Barely 3 weeks, 3 months after the coronavirus broke upon us, so to speak. Suddenly, there was the murder of a black man, George Floyd, in Minneapolis, in front of people on the sidewalk, in front of iPhones and webcams, phone cams. Now, that's happened before. But I don't have to say that to anyone. That's been a steady diet for decades, going back to slavery and beyond slavery, to our genocide, I'm talking American now, of Native Americans. And so it's not coincidental that people were at home because of the coronavirus, which is remarkable because, by the way, another way that the coronavirus is remarkable is that to contain it requires a reflection of fear. In other words, everything that's necessary to slow or stop the spread of the coronavirus is keeping a distance from other people, separation, isolating yourself. And as we begin to realize that any of these things taken without the intention of love are perfect reflections of fear. Now, are we involved in a miracle or not? All 7.5 billion of us. And that miracle is already bearing fruit. That's why people who saw that murder in Minneapolis felt they wanted to protest. They wanted to make a statement. And the first statement that they made, the first protest, was against police brutality, because that's the brutality that was most evident in the moment. But then, as more white individuals in the United States began to recognize the gruesomeness and the painfulness of systemic racism, which they might not have even recognized before, then that became the subject of the protest. And beneath that came the brutality that I've just mentioned that goes in our country all the way back to the genocide of Native Americans. And that became the protest, the brutality itself. In other words, the pursuit of external power.
Oh, yeah.
That is why people were willing to leave the safety of their homes and in the middle of a pandemic and go outside to make a statement. And if you look at these protesters, and I've looked at as many as I can through the internet, and there's something different about this, and you can see it and you can feel it, different about this protest. It's not vicious. It doesn't mean to hurt. Of course, there are violence. There are violent people who mix with the protesters. And they are people who feel that they've been betrayed by the system, by the country, by the culture, and they just as soon tear it all down and start again. That's there. But that's not the dominant energy in these protests. These protests are remarkable. It's so pleasing. And why is it so pleasing to us to see protesters encountering violence without giving violence in return? Why is it so pleasing to us to see? I saw a photograph of protesters. This photograph showed a cop in battle gear standing against a storefront. He'd gotten separated from the rest of his platoon or squad. And the protesters, it was so touching to me, were locking arms. Their arms were interlocked. They were forming a wall around this cop. Why? Why is that so pleasing? Protest in the past would be violently for the protester or against the cop.
Why were they forming the wall?
Because of love.
But what?
To protect the policeman.
No, you didn't say that part.
To protect the policeman from protesters in their midst who were violent and wanted to harm him. And there are so many experiences. We've all seen some pictures of someone in uniform making a gesture toward the protesters because they, within the confines of their job and their responsibilities, they feel a resonance and they want to express that resonance somehow. All of that is because this protest and the coronavirus are intimately related. They are both part of the unfolding of the new consciousness of humanity.
I'd like to simplify, if we can, what you just said is your view is that the protests are happening because so many people were home to witness what happened to George Floyd, and they had the space to reflect on their choice and what they were going to do, fear or love, and we weren't distracted because of the coronavirus. Is that what I'm hearing you saying?
Yes.
We weren't distracted with the things we usually get distracted by.
Yes, yes.
And they might not have gone through that process with awareness. They might not have used the articulation that I'm speaking, but I saw so many interviews with people in the early days of the protest. Why are you here? Why are you doing this? Because it's historic, man. This is changing everything. Said, I brought my kids down. I wanted to be a part of this. That didn't happen in Watts. That didn't happen in Ferguson, but it's happening now.
And it's happening globally.
Yes.
That's the thing that I find really intriguing, is that it's happening on a worldwide scale.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, why is that?
Right.
They don't have a history of genocide to Native Americans and slavery. Some countries do.
Yeah.
but the brutality is common to human experience.
Absolutely.
And the people who are protesting and the people who are feeling this new energy are the very people who are becoming, in their own ways, multisensory. And these people, as they become multisensory, are declaring to themselves, I will no longer contribute to the brutality that has characterized the human experience. And that is why the protest is global. It's in Tokyo. It's in Pakistan. It's in Berlin. It's in Paris. Now the protesters are beginning to move into the next phase. But look at what it's left behind. Look at the changes that it's made already. There's so many white people in this country that never knew of systemic racism. And now I look on Netflix, and for a while, the whole front line, they have 20
40 or more maybe.
Or 40 cinemas about Black history, Black culture, about Malcolm X, about Muhammad Ali. Well, he was always there, but about all the Black. There's a thirst for Black now, as we realize what our Black fellow students in the Earth School have been experiencing in the United States of America since before it was a country, and what minorities everywhere have always experienced. And we feel that we don't. And we will not be a part of that. That's what's already emerging from the coronavirus and the protest. Other things will emerge. Other challenging things will emerge. And they'll continue to do that until we no longer need them in order to learn how to love.
So I'm again faced with the question, what do we do? What do we do? How do we help ease this transition? How do we ride the wave? How do those of us who are multisensory or are becoming multisensory, how do we help?
I ask this, I always ask in my meditation every day, what can I do? What is there to do? And it doesn't matter what day it is or what time it is. It's always create with love, create authentic power, always. There's nothing. And if I'm creating authentic power, meaning if I'm using my life to create with love, if I have a fear come up in me and I feel it, I notice and know it's there, and I choose to create with love. And then what happens is I'm open to my intuition to know what the next step is and what to do. I don't mean it tells me what to do, but I have a sense of what needs to happen next. And my perspective is totally different, totally changed. It's a perspective that comes, a multisensory perspective is very different. It's like I'm not caught in the fearful ways of looking at something. I'm seeing it from a more impersonal place, so I can really appreciate what's happening. I can appreciate things from a different point of view, from a very a multisensory point of view. I have to say it that way because it is that. But I can't do that when I'm in fear. When I believe that it's overwhelming what's happening, when I believe that things are unfair, when I believe that I'm depressed, when I like all these fearful parts of me, we all have all of them. I remember during the Rodney King beatings in the 1980s, I remember reading a very small article in the LA Times by Thich Nhat Hanh. And Thich Nhat Hanh was saying at that time, and it's funny, I didn't really know a lot at that time, but I did know what I read was what he wrote was right. He basically was saying, don't judge anyone. Don't judge the people who are beating Rodney. Don't judge Rodney King. Don't judge the people that are judging everyone else. Don't judge anyone because you have all of that in you. It's all in you, and you need to change it in you. Because when you change it in you, I mean, I don't think he said that, but this is what I'm saying. When you change it in you, everything changes.
That's right.
Because when I change that in me, and I don't think, oh, well, it's them out there. No, it's me. And I'm going to change it here. And when I change it here, then what I do is more loving every time. It's like that's my whole idea in my life, is to create with more and more love, to always create with love. And sometimes I don't do it really well. Sometimes I get angry at Gary. Sometimes I think he did what he's done is wrong. But because we have a spiritual partnership, we clear that up really quickly, meaning that I see, oh, that was fear in me.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciating you, and I let that part of me speak for me. I believed it for a moment that it was true. And so I wanted to say that.
Thank you, beloved. I just want to take a little time to address your question, Shannon, directly so that everyone will know, what can I do?
Yes.
That's not a formula, but here's some things that you can do all the time. You can smile when you feel like glaring at someone because you think they've offended you. You can wave when you'd rather not have that person in your life. But the intention is always central. If you wave, if you smile, to manipulate them, that's not creating with love. If you smile, if you wave, because you're reaching for the part of your personality that reaches out for them, that's love. And you can do that every day, no matter whether you're isolated or whether you're going to the grocery store or whether somebody says they're not going to wear a mask because they think it's all a conspiracy theory. If you have no compassion for that person, what's the difference between you and that person? You can look at these things and start to change yourself. And as you do, you'll begin to create authentic power in your life with responsible choice, with emotional awareness. And you'll begin to feel the gifts that you were born to give.
Yes.
And intention is always important.
Yes.
When I first met Linda, her first thing she wanted to do was create an event so that we could share what was in the seed of the soul. You have decided to use the internet to help people consider and entertain ideas and energy such as we are sharing today. Linda and I create events. I write books. I love doing that. In fact, we just heard today that a book that I've been working on for 30 years has just gotten a publisher, and it'll be out next year.
Congratulations.
Yes, and it's called Universal Human. That's my path. It's not everybody's path to write books, but I love words. I love clothing concepts. I love clothing experiences and insights in concept. But if I only love doing that for attention, for recognition, for money, then again, that's the pursuit of external power. You can do any of these things, but the intention behind them determines the consequences they will create. And you alone choose the intention, love or fear. No one can do that for you. No one can create authentic power for you.
And the more that you create with love, the closer you're going to get to finding out why you're here on the earth. Because if you are not willing to do that, if you're not willing to choose love, even when you're angry at someone, you choose love. And I don't mean you get walked all over. What I mean is that you see, oh, well, if you're feeling angry, it means it has to do with you, not the other person. And that's a little bit hard of a concept to understand sometimes, but I can say from my constant practice for a long time now, I know it's true. I know that's true. And it's the time is now to give your gifts. Why you came here. Everyone has that. And if you decide to do that, then what you do is you start every day. You choose every moment. You're choosing, am I going to get angry? Am I going to feel jealous? Am I going to let myself be depressed? Or am I going to choose healthy?
Or when you do
healthier?
feel jealous and angry and depressed.
That's what I mean.
Am I going to act on that?
Exactly.
Or am I going to act on a healthier part of my personality?
And the more often you do that, you will find out what your what your gift is, what you're supposed to be here for. You will find it out, because that's the only way you're going to know what your intuition, you won't be able to hear your intuition if you're believing that you're overwhelmed or upset about something, and you don't challenge it, and you don't say, no, I'm not going with you. I'm going to choose this instead. I'm going to be loving. I'm going to be doing what I need to do. If you keep doing that, you're going to have so much access to your intuition and knowing what it is that you came here for, and begin to do it. So you can decide now whether you want to do it now or if you want to wait. It's really, every moment is that. Every moment is that.
And again, from the perspective of the soul, you can wait as long as you want. You will wait as long as you want. And you will experience the consequences of creating with fear instead of love, until you begin to connect the dots in your life. And that's what multisensory perception gives you, the experiential ground to stand on as you do. And you can begin to experiment with your life, to choose in some way to respond with love when you're feeling fear, when you're feeling the painful experiences of anger or rage or judgment or inferiority, and choose. Change happens when compassion happens, and not before.
Yeah. What I feel like I heard, the answer that my soul heard was, to what do I do is how do I be, really? How do I be? And anchoring back to that love. And then any action that I take from that point is rooted in that. And that's the right thing to do.
Your soul heard it just right.
Every moment. That's right. That's right.
We're doers, we're hustlers. We want to say, how can I make a difference? How can I impact, through whatever I feel is right. But I think if we anchor back in love, then, anything that we do is really, we can just be and rest in that. And like I said, anchor into it. So.
Yeah, yes. Creating, if that's your intention every day, and you just keep working on it, and even when it doesn't happen that way, you can start again. I'm always starting again. Let's start again, beloved. I don't think I said that in the way I wanted to. It's easy. You can just change. I don't mean it's easy, but you can say that every moment is a new opportunity to create in a more loving way and a healthy way. And, I just want to say one thing. I know this hour has gone by so fast.
Really fast. We're in no rush. We can chat as long as we'd like to. I know we still have some other things to talk about. So
we do. Yeah. Well, I want to be honoring of, I don't know how long people thought we were going to be. Yeah. We can talk for a little bit. If you have a few more.
I sure do. Yeah. No, I feel like we definitely rounded. And you did say you were at one more thing, and we'll see if that leads to another thing. So.
And maybe what we'll do is, if this is we feel really good about this, we'll plan on getting together again, too.
And we may have some questions that come in maybe while you're saying your last things, and we can talk about your upcoming retreat, your online retreat, and we'll see if we have any great questions that we'd like to address. We've had some really good comments. So.
Well, read us your two favorite questions, and we'll see if we can answer them.
Okay, my two favorite. Okay, let's see. I've got to scroll back up because there were some really wonderful ones. People really resonated with how you were describing your emotions, Linda, and how you can use them as an invitation to, look at other aspects of yourself. People are very excited about your new book. Let's see. The Soul of Humanity is Awakening Fully. Love what Gary is saying. What a gift nature is giving us. Definitely. Let's see. Oh, this was a really, really profound. Our well-being is intertwined with the well-being of others. I know that really resonated with several people commented on that. Yeah.
Can I elaborate on that just for
Please?
one?
Yeah.
That's the way most people look at close connections, as intertwined. I want to suggest that the well-being of others is not merely intertwined with yours. It is yours.
So it's even more than that, isn't it?
We are not connected. Connection requires two separate things to come into a relationship. The more you begin to use your multisensory perception, the more you realize something ineffable, indescribable, wonderful, and transformative. You are everyone else. That's what Thich Nhat Hanh wrote in his article about Rodney and the cops. He said, "You are the cops. You are Rodney. So your well-being is the well-being of others. So act on that. That's something worth acting on. When you act on that, you know that you're acting with love."
When I've been in,
And, pardon me, beloved.
Go ahead.
And I said, when change happens, when compassion happens. Compassion, you can't be compassionate for someone else without being compassionate for yourself. That's possible. Compassion is the good medicine that you give to someone else and you give to yourself at the same time.
Yeah.
Wow.
I just wanted to say one thing that happened. A long time ago, I was in a very deep, dark place. And I didn't know if I would get out of it. I just didn't know. I just didn't. I can't explain how it was for me. But I do know how it changed. It changed because I had one thought about something. Someone had called me, and I hadn't even listened to any of my messages. It was when they had used answering machines all the time, and I hadn't been answering or talking to anyone about anything. And I heard this message. I don't even know why I listened. And someone wanted help, wanted support, and I thought, that's the last thing I can do. That was one thought I had. But then I had another thought that came from a deeper place. It said, well, you can't help, but maybe you could just listen. Maybe you could just listen. And so I called, and it changed everything because I just listened. Just listened to what this friend of mine was saying. And as I listened, things started changing because I had all the support of the universe pouring in to support me to change, because I had made that one little shift in my thought, just that, listen to that little voice that said, well, maybe I could just call. I can't really help, but maybe I could just call. And I did. And I remember that so clearly because it was such a powerful and deep and dark time before that. And so I knew that in a moment, things can change. And so I just want to say that to everyone who might be feeling that way, might be in isolation and not know what to do and feel like they don't feel like they're worthy, or they're not, there's nothing good about why I'm on the earth. I shouldn't even be here, or whatever they're thinking. That just even shifting a little bit, just even a little thought of wanting to do it differently, wanting to be of support, can make all the difference. So I just want to say that just came to, I don't know who it's for, but I wanted to say it.
Now, it's not an itsy bitsy change. It's the shift. It is the choice between love and fear.
Yeah.
And there's nothing itsy bitsy about that.
Yeah.
It's as big as the Grand Canyon.
It's true.
And you're the one that has to make it.
Yeah.
And you will eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Why wait?
Wow, thank you for sharing that, Linda. And I'm so glad that you made that shift, that itty bitty change, and you're here with us today sharing this message. And I know a lot of people are really struggling in a dark place, and we've been stripped of our identities, often our jobs, sometimes our relationships, all due to what's been going on or other factors. But I think that message was deeply felt by many in our audience. We have a question you may or may not want to talk about, but I feel like you'll have a unique viewpoint. Can you comment on the political divide going on in the country at this time in history?
Yes, of course. It's reflecting the choice between love and fear. And it's also calling all of us to compassion. When you see someone who has no compassion, when you see someone who is controlled by fear, by jealousy, by greed, you can recognize that, and you can also know, because you're becoming aware of your own experiences, that those are painful to experience. And anyone who is behaving without compassion, with greed, with anger, with righteousness, is in pain, is in deep pain. And this is the time to call on your compassion. Doesn't mean you agree with the greed. It doesn't mean that you agree with we were saying Cornel West was speaking at Harvard when Colin Kaepernick was getting an award there. And he said something about Cornell, was talking about the great Christian tradition of charitable hatred. Wow,
What?
Cornell, what is that? Because Cornell is Baptist, I think. I mean, or an atheist, but where was that coming from? And he said, that means love the sinner and hate the sin. All right, I'm not Christian in that sense. I don't think in terms of sin. I think in terms of cause and effect. No one is guilty of anything. We are each creators, choosing moment by moment the consequences that we will encounter in our lives in a beneficent universe and a very effective work school, of which the coronavirus, the global protest, all of that is a part. And so having not agreeing with anything that comes from fear does not mean that's licensed to judge. You don't know enough to judge. You don't know what's coming to conclusion in a moment of someone's anger or selfishness or hatred, or a lifetime of anger and selfishness and hatred and lack of empathy. You don't know. And if you judge, you will create painful consequences for yourself. That's the universal law of cause and effect, or karma. So, as Gandhi did, you can stand in the way between an oppressor and the oppressed, but without judging the oppressor. You can rescue someone like a child without judging someone who's abusive to the child, because if you judge, you create painful consequences for yourself. You contribute more to the world of external power. And that's the world that you want to change. And the only way that you can change it is to become compassionate yourself.
Can you say again how you defined compassion earlier? It was medicine. And I would just like to leave our viewers with that definition. Do you recall it?
Compassion is being moved by and from the energy of the heart. Compassion is the medicine, the good medicine that you give to others, and you give to yourself at the same moment.
Time.
That was it.
Yeah.
That was it. I feel that, especially as we're educating ourselves maybe on systemic racism or other things, we are lacking the compassion for ourselves for not knowing better and not doing better and taking part in this system that maybe we weren't aware the way it was built. And we have compassion for the, immediately afflicted parties, but having that compassion for ourselves as we learn and unlearn and relearn, I think that's really important.
Yeah.
Also.
And I want to say that for anyone who's interested, Gary and I are doing a live online event in a few weeks. It's the 26th or the 30th of July. And we've been doing this event for many, many, many years.
And it's never been the same once.
Ever.
To our amazement.
But this is the first time it's actually been fully online. So we are so excited about it and really would love to support people in what we're taught. If you feel resonant with what we've been saying and you want to go deeper with it, it's something I wouldn't want you not to know about. So please find out about it. You can go to our website, seatofthesoul.com, and just look it up. And if you are really interested in coming, let us know, because you can email our office at, I think, journey at Seat of the Soul. It's called the Journey to the Soul.
Okay.
This, and let us know. And then if you do, there's a special price that you would get for coming. It's a little, it's a little off the event, but I think it would really be helpful to people, some people.
I think that that's really, really cool opportunity for people who maybe wouldn't be able to attend one of your in-person events. Maybe this is the time and the space that they have the opportunity, and it's new souls coming to your program and to learn from you.
Yeah.
We will leave the info in the comments. So if you're interested in that program, I would say leave a comment so that you are notified when we comment with the information. So there's a little graphic that has all the information. Oh, perfect. David Mann commented with it. Thank you, David.
Nice. Thank you, David.
Yeah, beautiful. Oh, such good comments too. So thank you all so much. Thank you, Gary and Linda. This was a wonderful time, as I knew it would be. I was looking forward to this so much the last few weeks as we co-created this together.
Yeah.
And just so grateful for you.
I really appreciate co-creating with you. I really appreciate what you're doing at Guidely, and being with you again for the second time, and I know Amir, we really appreciate him. We met him some time ago and just felt an instant connection. So it's so lovely to be co-creating with you.
Thank you. Yes, we always touch on what we're doing kind of at the end of the interview, but we are getting ready. We're counting down to launching our global platform that connects guides being coaches, authors, teachers, mentors, counselors, to the people who need their gifts, and really offering that one-on-one next level expansion that so many are seeking, and having that sacred container held for them as they learn and grow. We're very passionate about spiritual and personal development here, and that's why we invite guests such as you here to share your message and your gifts. And it's my heart is full and my face is beaming. So thank you. So
Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Shannon. Thank you, beloved. It's been great to be here with all of us together. Yeah.
Wonderful. Yes. So we'll read all the comments and respond. If you want info on the program, it's been posted. So, all right. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.